Hey guys, I'm Andrei, a certified translator and a real estate concierge, still by the way, and this is another weekly biased update about, let's say, sanctions. COVID updates are no longer ringing a bell because there's no COVID anymore. The facts, figures and analysis that are going to follow are the fruit of my mind, which is not necessarily always straight, so let's see what happened and let's try and assume what's going to happen in the near future. Things are cracking on next door, and there's an assumption, kind of facts-backed assumption, that the troubles are going to be over within the next month. I won't elaborate on what kind of troubles. You're perfectly reading between headlines, guys. Let's just focus more on what's going on in Belarus. Life is a game in the local translation, and the world's a stage in the original, so I very much thank you for keeping the whole game in play. Your donations, your help, your kind words, donations more than kind words of course, help the whole thing rolling and allows me to get you better pictures, better shots and maybe longer stories sometimes. We may assume that before things will get really hot here, pricing dramatically up and salaries dramatically down, and all the things that come out of here have another 1 month advance in timing. Let's see what happened. And speaking about the obvious, no, it's not my new car. It's more like a global philosophical concept of what's coming for us in the near future, unless things somehow dramatically change for some reason. The reason that's not on the table to be seen. Now, since life is a game or a play, whichever translation you pick better, the theater behind me is a more appropriate setting for this update today. And the good news is that in a few days' time, after another cool wave of cold weather, things will get back to normal again and spring will be full on. Now the birds are singing, there's some green grass and there's some first blossom, but this is going to be affected by the oncoming cold wave. Let's discuss the rest of the headlines. Another good thing about this non-COVID update is that the visa-free mode through the airport of Minsk is working for about 76 countries. You can fly in and out without visa. I repeat, in and out, not via Russia, to spend 30 days here without a visa. Some people confuse it with free visa, but there's no free visa at the airport. There's visa-free mode. And you can fly to Turkey, Armenia, Kazakhstan and Georgia, which flights are pretty pricey now, but you can pick a good connection, and some $300 round way trip by air is not a problem. That's if you're going to visit this charming place. And if you're going to visit this charming place, there's no self-isolation anymore. You only have to have a PCR or a good excuse like business visit. Otherwise, there's just no COVID, no masks, everything is working, people are moving around, things are happening, events are held to the extent they can be held in the current climate. And in light of this, the western border has been made more transparent. There are no special requirements anymore for the visitors over land, except for visa, of course. And the special reasons like business reason or health reason is no longer required to come by land for those who have a visa, or for those who are visa-free, like Brazilian passport holders, Israeli passport holders and such like. They can come over land, Serbian too, Turkish as well, by the way. So the last thing here is that the Latvians and Lithuanians are welcome to Belarus without a visa for a month. There's a special decree on that, and since from 16th of April, which is tomorrow I guess, or today even, these countries' citizens can stay in Belarus without visa, come overland, and this is like an extended visa-free overland test driving period, 1 month. They're thinking to open the rest of the country for the rest of Europe, like to improve the ties and everything, but that's getting us slightly into the political part of our little discussion today. Our foreign ministry has released an address to the Europeans to ask to start the revision of the relationships and the release of the political prisoners and cancelling the visas for all EU citizens or all EU states, which is an interesting move, and I don't think this byplay will get Europeans off their track, sanctions track, although now there's a bit of a competition between the EU and Russia, and Belarus is tied up to Russia, as you know, not necessarily willingly at all times, about shooting each other's feet and whatever else can be shot when you are not trying to kill somebody but to inflict an injury. They are doing sanctions, they are harming people both ways, but there doesn't seem to be a political gain for now. So my suspicion is the West will be determined to push the sanctions until there's an obvious result. My suspicion is, intuition-based suspicion and based on the previous experience too, there may be some European byplay with the current president of Belarus, and the more realistic look at it, Russia will not let it happen to develop into a relationship, if you know what I mean. Now we can have a little chat about sanctions and the way they impact us. That's going to be the main part of our video today. The European sanctions are mounting up. Belarus is grounding its 7 aircraft. Never use them in the Western airspace, I guess, because their maintenance is disallowed by a specific American-launched sanctions package. So I guess they're going to fly less. As some of you may know, several Russian banks are under sanctions, including Alfa Bank and its Belarusian branch. Alfa Bank Belarus is really a separate legal entity, but I guess somewhere behind the door that says sanctions on it in America, the folks are playing the game hard, and the sanctions affecting the Russian bank are also affecting our bank here. A local Alfa has submitted an update for iOS. Android-based phones are working with the bank app all right, and the App Store is taking a considerably longer while to clear this banking app, which makes the life much harder here on the ground for the actual users, for the people who are using this Belarusian bank. Right now my client is aiming to buy a 1-bedroom apartment, so we're going to wire to an Alfa bank some $50,000. And we'll see what happens out of that. You see, now there's a tricky thing with buyers and sellers. I'll make a separate video on that. But in short, as you remember from my videos, sellers here don't really want to walk away with rubles from the deal. And the dollars can't be materialized in cash because you can only have them on your account. And you can't pay in dollars from your account because this option is no longer valid, it's no longer existing. So the trouble is, there's a lack of buyers with dollars, and my guy is one of them, and that improves our odds. But secondly, it's very hard to get some US cash on the table to make the deal happen, and that's the bugger, the shortcoming. We'll see how we balance it about, and we'll see what happens after that. I'll of course post an update this week, I hope. My Scandinavian tourist, and there were tourists a while ago here, called it Yisk. So the Yisk network is like similar to IKEA kind of guys, I understand it, are quitting Belarus. There are horrendous queues in the half-empty shops now. I understand there were 2 brand shops of Yisk in Minsk, and people are enjoying their last discounts for some good European shit. Again, it's sad. People are affected and people are being pressed to buy this and this, maybe stock something up, something they don't really need at the moment, and that's how the sanctions work on a simple man. On a simple man, they work at the border where trucks are lining up in a horrendous line for kilometers to enter the Baltic countries, for instance, because there's a 16th of April enforced ban for the logistics operators to enter EU. I understand it's boats, rail carriers, and specifically lorries, trucks. So there are loads of them being kicked out of the EU countries from the other side, and loads of them trying to get their shit into Europe on the last minute, claiming they were loaded before the decree was adopted in EU. And Lithuania, like leisurely, is trying to let some of them in because, yeah, you know, they're poor guys carrying their stuff into EU. And here's my question to you. What do you think, guys? Is this thing going to actually affect the European economy? Because a considerable amount of foodstuffs, not necessarily just sunflower oil or something, is really coming from this direction into Europe and not the other way around. We can forget the sanctioned European things, which were cheerfully relabeled here and sent into Russia. Since 2014, Russians have come up with a lot of imports replacement. How much do you think it's going to to affect the European price increase? I mean, especially in the food area. Put your comments underneath the video. It's going to be interesting to read. And I'm hearing that in Germany prices are up for the food, and elsewhere in Europe, by and by, they are mounting up. With all the political background, there's justification to that. Obviously in dollar equivalent, and a lot of things here are in dollar equivalent because it's been a savings currency since the 90s. Some people still come here and get surprised by our attachment to dollar, which I understand about inflation and everything, which is still a bit harder than the local ruble, at least by the force of habit that people invest into this savings currency. So salary-wise, the city of Minsk, a 2 million city, 9.3 million in Belarus, has some 2,000 ruble salaries per month in February, and that's before the war. Minsk region is one of the best paid, some 1,300 rubles per month. That's net salary without taxes and with everything paid. That's what you get in your hands on a payday. And the skinniest is Belarus region, which has about 1,000 rubles per person on average. That's the regions, not the regional cities, except Minsk that I listed above. And with these salaries in mind, they're not really increasing, and the March statistics is going to be worse because, again, another wave of IT folks, the GDP creators, has been pushed out of the country, and 10% increase in public transport. Metro went up from 80 kopecks to 90 kopecks. Some of you may laugh about some, let's say, European tube prices, UK metro prices, but the prices here are up and the salaries are not. That's the point. I understand you have the same point there, but we're talking about Belarus right now. Well, sanctions are also pressing locals to create something instead of importing it, like office printer paper, for simple, is now being produced at one of our classical Soviet factories in the south. They recently had run an upgrade with some Chinese workforce involved, and now they can produce 2,500 boxes of it a day. Box contains 5 packs, if I recall it right, and they sell it for 10 rubles versus market price of about 30 to 50 rubles, except they only sell it to the bureaucrats, to the state companies. You can't just walk into the brand store of their factory and buy yourself a couple of packs. It's not there. The market prices for the paper are 30 to 50 rubles a pack. In the first case, it's a 12-day waiting period for supply, and the 50 ruble pack of paper arrives next day or same day after you order it. They also make diapers, if I got the word right. And since we exported timber for ships, there's 400 years that passed, and now we started making paper, which is kind of a breakthrough, for God's sake. The government has also announced some kind of help and assistance package for the small businesses, which is a delay of introduction of cash registers to farmers, bakers, small entrepreneurs. It's shifted until December this year, like something's going to improve after December this year. And I always admire, I'm always amazed, to put it mildly, as an ex-small businessman. Now I have a little company. I used to be a private businessman, self-registered, self-employed, about this assistance that comes every 5 years when we have elections. At least they talk about some assistance, then something happens and it never happens, no assistance comes our way. Now they announce some kind of loans to the businesses. They do exports of services to earn currency. When I had bloody tourists and the farm stay that tried to kickstart and failed miserably, there weren't any loans allowed, and loans in the banks were like 15%, 17%, never mind whatever you do. And there were 5% discounted loans for village hotel businesses for farm stays, like one of those I have. It was 5% interest rate, but there was basically 20,000 euro. I'm not sure what you can achieve with 20,000 euro. I guess you can buy some mattresses and stuff for the houses, and you can't really build a guest house for 20,000 euro. Maybe a very, very tiny one. So now they actually are ready to supply this cheap money, potentially cheap, to the guys who are willing to continue with the business. Except the question is there, how much business are we going to have in the near future? That's unclear. Speaking of the banks, I just came across an ad from one of the sanctioned banks. There are 4 currently, 3 are commercial banks. And it's advertising bank deposits with 21% interest rate in local currency. Current annual inflation in Belarus is over 10% now already. And the withdrawal of the bank money from local banks in Belarus in March was pretty high, only stopped by, or only slowed down by, the fines that the banks impose on currency removed from the accounts before the deadlines. That keeps some money still inside the banks here. Let's see if mid-April is going to be different from mid-May. I hope to be in touch with you guys. Thank you very much for any feedback. Donation links and my contacts are under the video if you have any complicated questions. Otherwise, any feedback is welcome on the public board. Leave your comments. Appreciate any feedback, especially from people living in Western Europe, to which place many locals are still wanting to move away from the hardships of the current given lovely place. I'm not going anywhere. I'm in love with the place. I like the flowers, I like the food and everything. Weather not necessarily at all times. I like it too though. Shop responsibly, travel wisely. Thank you for staying with the channel, and I hope to see you in Minsk someday. Cheers.